Have you ever heard of a new movement, a new company, any kind of group that actively tried not to grow? It sounds crazy, right? Well, today we're diving into a foundational speech from a new spiritual movement in Japan, given back in 1987, that reveals exactly that, a totally unconventional, almost backward vision for the future.
And that brings us to the central puzzle here. I mean, imagine you've just started something, and it's taking off like crazy. Your instinct is to get as many people in the door as possible. But this group, they did the exact opposite. So the big question is, why on earth would they do that?
Well, the speaker explained that in their very first year, they went with what he called a stoic strategy. Instead of chasing a huge membership, they deliberately made it hard to join. The whole idea was to build this incredibly solid core, a kind of model group of the first few thousand people who would become the real foundation for everything that came later.
And get this, the demand was absolutely off the charts. Even though they were trying to keep things quiet, the speaker says they were getting something like 5,000 letters a month from people who were just desperate to get in. So the pressure to open the floodgates was huge, but they refused.
So how'd they keep people out? By setting the bar incredibly high. To even have a shot at joining, you had to read a minimum of 10 of their books, fill out this super detailed application, and then pass an entrance exam. And in reality, most of the people who actually made it in had read more like 20 books. And, maybe the craziest part, every single one of those application essays was personally graded by the founder. Okay, so this whole strategy, it just sounds bizarre, right? But it all starts to click once you understand the group's core philosophy. They basically believed that our society's entire value system is completely upside down.
The speaker uses this really powerful metaphor to explain it. He says that the pyramid of what we value in this world is often inverted. The things we're all taught to put at the very top are, from a spiritual point of view, actually the least important.
So on one side, you have the world's values, right? Your job title, how much money you make, your education, fame, all that stuff. But on the other side, the group argued that true spiritual value comes from things like a sincere desire for truth, a genuine enthusiasm for enlightenment, and the ability to really look at yourself and reflect.
And here's the kicker. When they actually tested this theory with their own seminars and exams, they found something pretty amazing. A person's status in the outside world had zero connection to how well they did. In fact, sometimes it seemed to be the other way around. The speaker gives these concrete examples that apparently just baffled a lot of the members. You'd have university professors and doctors, people who are seen as the best and brightest in society, and they would often really struggle or even fail the exams. Meanwhile, people that society might overlook, like housewives or housekeepers, were consistently the top performers.
So if your job and your education are useless as a measure, then how do you figure out a person's real value? Well, the group came up with a system to do exactly that, a brand new way to measure the human soul.
These exams weren't about what you knew from books. The speaker actually calls them a spiritual yardstick. It was a tool they designed specifically to measure someone's actual level of enlightenment, not just how smart they were.
And they had a whole system built around it. If you passed the beginner seminar, it meant you'd entered what they called the fifth dimension, a higher state of consciousness. Passing the intermediate level meant you were getting close to the sixth dimension. And if you passed the advanced seminar, you'd reach the state of an arahat, which in their view is a very highly enlightened being.
And the founder was incredibly confident in this whole thing. In the speech, he makes this bold claim that their spiritual yardstick was over 80% accurate at figuring out the true spiritual state of any person's soul.
But this wasn't just about creating an internal leaderboard for members. This whole system was actually the launchpad for the movement's ultimate goal, to completely change how the entire world sees reality. He points to a very real problem their members were facing. They felt like they had to hide their beliefs. They were afraid to tell their boss or even their family that they were part of this group because they were worried it would hurt their careers or their relationships. Society just saw these ideas as strange.
But the speaker's answer to this isn't to hide or to try and fit in. No way. It's a direct challenge to the way things are. He says, look, if common sense is wrong, then our job is to overturn it. Simple as that.
And that, right there, is the big, audacious goal. The mission wasn't just to be another spiritual group on the side. It was to take this hidden world of spiritual truth and drag it right into the spotlight, to make it the new standard, the new common sense for everyone, to literally flip that pyramid of values for the entire planet.
So, this vision from 1987 leaves us with a really provocative question, doesn't it? It forces you to stop and ask,
What if everything our society uses to judge people, our jobs, our money, our status, is totally meaningless? What if the real measure of who we are has absolutely nothing to do with our life here on Earth? And if that's the case, then what are we all working so hard for?